share. Okay, we have a fun keynote planned today. I want to tell you what I know about Carl Hooker.
Oh no.
I did find out the best way to reach him is through Twitter. You get an instant response.
That's very true.
And I have a little story to tell about him. One of the first times I met him was at TCEA. It was at the end of a session, and I honestly can't even remember if Carl did the session or if he was just there. But he had talked about Twitter and how cool it was, and I didn't get it. I'd had an account for a while, and the people I followed, one in particular I remembered that I followed was Shaquille O'Neal. And I'm not real sure why I followed Shaquille O'Neal. Probably my kids told me, oh, he tweets funny stuff. And I didn't really get it. It was also about the time, do y'all remember when Ashton Kutcher and Larry King had the competition? Mm-hmm. That many years ago, they were going to see who could get 1 million followers faster. And that's how many years ago it was. And so my phone woke me up during the night with a CNN alert to tell me that Ashton Kutcher won. I think he was the winner. So this is how long ago it was. I didn't know how to silence my phone either during the night. But anyway, Carl sat with me and he explained a few things to me and made me see the value in it. So I've used Twitter ever since then. And that seems like a small story, but we laugh about it because he says he's my Twitter dad. So I came home and I told my kids, I said, Carl Hooker's my Twitter dad. And he said, Mom, that doesn't sound too cool. Come on.
My Twitter dad is here too, by the way. Joel is here.
Joel's your Twitter dad?
Joel is my Twitter dad.
Hey, Grandpa. I didn't know we were related.
Yeah.
So anyway, Carl is here to do some fun stuff with us. A couple of things, if you don't know Carl, I think most of you do, you know that he's smart, he's fun, he's got a good sense of humor, he likes iPads a whole lot, he likes zombies, he likes music, and if you don't know him, you will learn those things very quickly. He's also a very forward thinker and is leading the Eanes ISP to do great things. So anyway, here's Carl Hooker.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Yeah, done. All right, walk up stage. I'm supposed to walk up stage, right? Let's see. Okay. It was funny when I came here this morning. Jessica came up to me and said, "What did you say? This is like a family reunion." And it's interesting. It really is. This is actually the first time I ever spoke in front of a crowd, and it was at my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, a family reunion. And just like a family reunion, you said, you got to watch out because there's certain people you don't want to sit next to, right? So I can tell you guys have already strategically planned it. So. Uh-oh. Oh, you said one. She wants my computer. That's what it is. And as you can tell by this stunning young man you see before you here, I aged quite well, right? And my fashion sense, always better. As you can tell by that sweater right there. And some of you that have seen me speak before probably know that young lady on the left. You guys know who that is? It's my sister. Yes, it's Anita. You know. No. I didn't have to say it. I'm just waiting for the crowd. I was about to say what happens here stays here, except for it's also being live streamed at the same time. So I gotta be careful. No, that is Anita. It's Anita Hooker. Yes, my parents had a very cruel, sick sense of humor. But really, the reason why I'm showing these pictures is not to make fun of her, because she's very sweet. She married a guy, his name is Young, and she hyphenated her name. Also a true story. Yes, anyway. The reason I'm showing you these pictures is because back then, this is my grandmother in between us, and I was living in El Paso, Texas. Anyone here from El Paso? Woohoo! Tim Holt, where are you? Oh, no. He's watching on the live stream. In El Paso, my grandmother had very much cutting-edge technology. You can't really see it in this Christmas picture here, but I'll move this picture over a little bit, and you'll notice that she had the very first ever picture-in-picture television. It was intense! And she had this thing on top of it. It was called a Betamax? Yeah, Grandma didn't win on that war, right? VHS went out. And so I've always been surrounded by technology when it comes to my family, and it got me into this profession in quite a different way. So I'd like to ask you guys this question, and I just live tweeted this out. So I want to encourage a two-screen experience today. So what I want you to do is have your screens out. I want you to be interacting with me. And so while I'm presenting, I'll also be throwing questions out at you. Here's the first one, and it just went on the TEC SIG hashtag. If my live tweets are working, we'll find out in just a second. What was the first, you got it? Oh, cool. Q1, what was the first job you ever had? Now, those of you that have never done a Twitter chat, most of you in here have done it. So you know on Twitter chats you respond with A1, answer 1, and then whatever your answer is. So on the TEC SIG 15 hashtag, we'll say, what was the first job you ever had? Think way back when. Back when I was that kid, it was a busboy at Village Inn. Very exciting stuff. I'll pull up that hashtag now and look at it. Wait. All right, someone's going to have to read me the answers until I get this thing back up. Here we go. I'll pull it up. Of course, if you guys are on Twitter, you're seeing the answers as they fly in right now. I'm just going to go by them. I'm going to go to this and read them out of here. I drove a tractor on my grandpa's farm. Wow. Juan, you worked at a supermarket way back then. Mary, serving barbecue. All right, there we go. Stock boy, we've got raking yards in a rich neighborhood in town. All right. Cashier at Hastings, dipped ice cream. Mark Simmons, who worked at a shoe store. I would have never guessed that. And now you can 3D print the shoes. That's great. First official job I had was a bagger at H-E-B. Snack bar at Walmart. Oh, these are good. Okay. So, as my MacBook reboots, yes, only at a TEC SIG event would my actual technology fail and crash on me. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. I think it's important that we also encourage this in our kids. And so today, a lot of the things that we're going to be doing is involving, of course, the technology you guys have in front of you. And this keynote is not going to be a super long one because at the end of it, I'm actually going to get us into Teams at some point. And we're going to, let's see, virtual one, that's my password. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry. Hey, look. There we go. Okay. Get all my stuff back up and running. Oops. I did not download illegal Game of Thrones torrents. No. Put my hashtag back up there. TEC SIG 15. Okay. We'll try that again and reboot it and see how it goes. All right, here we go. Back to that one. So for me, before I actually became the Director of Innovation and Digital Learning at Eanes ISD, became the founder of iPadpalooza, which, by the way, I'm very excited that Donna Stanley, where are you, Donna? Donna Stanley's here. iPadpalooza East Texas, right? Very cool. We have a South Texas and Indiana, Minnesota happening this year. Very cool. Kind of like the TED experience. It's all free, licensed model, TEDx. We're trying to expand this stuff. It's fun. So before I became the Director of Innovation and Digital Learning at Eanes, I was actually a first grade teacher. You did not know that? Yeah. Oh, good. We have some first grade teachers in the crowd. And now my clicker's not working. Man, it's like everything's failing at once. This is good. Can I borrow someone else's? No, I'm just kidding.
Like
this
being
is
in the
really interesting if I have to click out of every slide and do that every time. Hey, there we go. There it works. Yes, that's me with the Einstein tie. I put the big arrow there just in case you guys couldn't figure out which one of those was me. So a couple things about this picture. One, 2001 to 2002. So these kids are now sophomores in college, which is really scary to think. The gray hairs on my beard just started appearing. And the other thing is technology looked very different in my classroom. We had one of those big projectors. You remember that big projector that everyone had in their school? And it looked like an aircraft carrier? And you had to wheel it like from the library in your school. And in your classroom, I had to set it up in the back of the classroom because so it could project a big enough image onto the wall. And kids, of course, would make fun of it all the time. But that was what technology looked like. We had 3 compact computers in the back of our classroom. And they ran ClarisWorks on them. Man, we loved ClarisWorks. We're using that thing all the time. And I also like to take pictures of with random people, like these people here. And no, not really. That's the obligatory family shot. That's my wife and kids there. This is us about 5 minutes before we got to that van there and went on a 3-week road trip across the southeastern United States this summer. This is us 1 or 2 minutes before. Notice the smiles? It all looks great? Yeah. 5 minutes after we get in the car, this happens. When are we going to be there? Like 3 weeks, be quiet. It's a long trip. So we got on this road trip and started traveling all over. Of course, we had our own hashtag. It was HookerTrek14. And so every time we'd visit family and friends, they would take a picture of us. And I said, make sure you put it on Instagram, on Twitter. Make sure you use the hashtag. And we curated all these photos from our family trip. Not from our point of view, but from our friends and family's point of view. It's a pretty interesting way to do it. And the other reason I bring up this picture is because I always like to point out when these girls are going to graduate from high school. Yes, and pray for me that I have 3 girls, and also pray for them, because their last name, well, you know their last name. So 2027 is Sophia, 2029 is Lauren, and 2031 is little Caroline there. And I started thinking, when I was talking to some parents about this the other day, I was like, yeah, this is great, they're going to graduate Westlake High School, 2031. And I started thinking, what's 2031 even going to look like? And so I'm going to ask this to this very intelligent crowd. What will technology look like in the year 2031? Here's your question 2. What will technology look like? And this could be educational technology, or it could just be technology in general. Somebody will probably say flying skateboards. I always hear that one. So let's think about that. And I'll look up here, so I'll search back and forth. Somebody was Jared the Subway guy? I just saw that. Who was that? Different impersonator in the crowd. So what will technology look like in the year 2031? Let's see if we can come up. All right, hopefully you guys are seeing it because they aren't popping up on mine anymore. Oh, there. Smaller and more mobile, more predictive even, and more pervasive. Wow, okay. This may be somebody who's not even in this room. That's what I love about Twitter. Your responses from people that aren't even here. Ubiquitous. Joel, I love it. The University of Mars. Go Rovers! Yay! Mike is just going to go ahead and admit it. He has no idea. And I agree in a lot of ways, right? We don't know. The funny thing is that I'm talking to teachers about this. Flying cars want, I hope so. My hope is that in 10 years, just 10 years, the self-driving car is finally making its way in the streets. You know why in 10 years? Because my daughter turns 16 in 10 years. And so I know there's actually legislation right now that Texas is passing for regulating self-driving cars. It's actually on the floor right now about whether or not, I think the regulations, you can't sleep in your self-driving car. That's the rule they want to pass. The Jetsons, all resources will be embedded. Good stuff. Okay. They'll definitely, what you say, Ann? You'll definitely be wearing wherever it is. That's true. We've gotten more and more wearables. I've seen the Google contact lens, right? That you can have, and so when you're actually having a conversation with someone from another country, you can actually see subtitles of what it actually says. They're already prototyping this. So that could be really distracting, I think, too, especially if someone could take over and start making pop-up ads. Like, hey, driving down the road. Which would be in a self-driving car, so it'll all be okay. Yeah.
Junk mail in your eye.
Technology will be like the lawnmower man, Rich. Yeah, I was thinking about that. There's a lot of stuff that gets in your brain. Interesting. So here's the thing. You ask this to a group of teachers, and they'll say, well, we know it'll be different, and they all admit it. Parents, they do the same thing. It'll all be different. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do different? Well, a lot of times, teachers are like, well, oh, I didn't realize I had to change. Well, you just said the future is going to be different, but you're not changing. So I always ask teachers this, and I ask parents, it's like, what are you doing to prepare for this? Or how are you helping your kids prepare for it? Because it's not about just raising kids, right? We're raising adults. That's a big part of what our job is. And society and school have really reflected this change quite a bit. I mean, you think about what society looked like way back then. Does anyone know who that is? You may recognize him. Of course, he holds a different title now, right? In society now. You think about what innovation looked like back then. I mean, this is crazy. I saw this thing and I had to put it over. This is an oven that can cook off the motor of your car. In the 1950s, you could actually have this hot dog sizzler put into your car, and you can cook hot dogs while you drove for $3.95. That's awesome. Of course, innovation now, you've seen these pictures a lot, like all this technology now fits into your pocket. Polaroid, I have no idea what that palm-looking thing is over there. Yeah, I've heard of those. The new message pad. The very first, really, iPad, wasn't it?
Yep.
Internet then. Does anyone remember Netscape Navigator? It got me through college. Netscape Navigator. It was like the web page is like, that graphic there was cool because like, remember it would load, and it would just be a little icon and then it would slowly.
First live fish tank.
The what's that?
First live fish tank was on.
The first live fish tank from Michael Gross. Thank you.
I'm surprised you didn't see it.
I have not seen that. I mean, you think about the internet then and what it is now, it's a lot more video driven, right? It is. It's really more visual. It's like, you think about how slow that graphic took to load back then in the 1990s versus what it does now. Everything's just increased exponentially. They call it the hockey stick, right? Where technology just kind of goes on this curve and just keeps going up. So, I have a little clip. This is only about 20 seconds, but I was able to go back in time. Actually, I didn't go back in time. I found this video of this classroom in the early 1980s. And I thought this would be interesting for us in this crowd to just kind of take a breath and look at it and think, okay, this is 30 years ago. Let's look at this classroom and see what is the same and what is different in classrooms today. You may recognize the clip. And you know what? I just realized I don't have my audio plugged in here, so let me do that first. So you can hear it too. And then I just skipped through everything. Let's see if that works. No audio. Oh, man. Try that again. Oh, you guys didn't see it. That's awesome. Oh, you don't know what it was. Well, now you see what it is. Rats, I gave it away. All right, do you have an audio cord up here? Let me try this again.
Business and the chapters they go. Please pass them to the list below. Like that.
Yep. Graph paper.
Some of you might remember what that was. Okay, so here's your third question. What is the same or what is different in classrooms in the early 1980s? Now that's, of course, fast times for month high. But what is still the same and what has changed? What is different in our classrooms today? So, you know, besides Sean Penn's shorts, which thank goodness those have changed. Although the shoes are coming back, I've seen. Pull this up and see if you guys are answering on that. What is the same? What is different? And then while I'm doing that, I'll find an audio cord somewhere up here, I hope. Yes, guys? Okay. I'll get that. Wow, okay. Does anyone have any duct tape? I think. Oh, Virgil. Okay, good.
Just hold it. Just go there and hold it.
Sitting is almost the same in the same classrooms. That's what Juan says. That's true. In a lot of classrooms, even with technology, we still see desks in rows. They're doing something different. They have a screen in front of them now, a Chromebook, an iPad, something, but they're still sitting in those rows. Same rows. Teacher-driven, Elizabeth says. Very true. You notice Mr. Hand says, okay, and actually earlier in that clip, of course, he says, I have taken the time to plan out all the 180 days of this entire school year. Here's the syllabus, and nothing's going to change, right? And he just hands it back. Now, take this and pass it back. This is how it is. Unfortunately, teachers still in the front of the room, still using paper, but it doesn't smell so good. Thank you, Mark. Yes, from our previous shoe salesman. Very good. Classrooms design still kind of look the same. There's a lot of same, right? I'm not seeing a lot of different. I guess different, you could say technology, for sure. Teachers still get worksheets, but it's a little different, right? Now it's just a digital worksheet. Donna said that. Very good, very true. Is that really anything different? Are we really moving the needle? I mean, it's definitely a change. We're saving trees, but...
I don't think we're seeing what you're seeing
Right.
on the screen.
Oh, you're not?
Not on Earth.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just reading out loud. I didn't want to switch again because I don't want to break my MacBook again. So, when I think of technology and the history of technology, where the classrooms have come, I've shared this picture before. Some of you may have seen it. This is actually in the year 1899. there was a French newspaper that commissioned a bunch of artists to actually come up with a concept of what the year 2000 would look like. And they drew all sorts of crazy stuff. In fact, I'll show you some other pictures in one of my breakout sessions of some of the other things they came up with. But this particular picture was interesting. This is what they said the classroom would look like in the year 2000. This is what they thought it would look like. They said there's going to be, first of all, very small class sizes, which we all love, right? 7 kids. Secondly, I'm sorry if you're a female in the year 2000, because apparently this is an all-boys school here. But you look at it, the professor's turning in the books, it's just going right into their heads, right? They're just consuming that content. And in a lot of ways, we really haven't changed that. And in fact, in our school, particularly when we first handed out devices, I mean, I could almost put this picture over that and say, in some ways, really, what the first thing you do when you get a device, a lot of times people say, well, where's my textbook? I get my textbook on it. And I take notes on it. I get my textbook. And so really, we're just pumping that knowledge back into them. I'll tell you right now, if you're just using iPads or Chromebooks or whatever technology, if you're just using it for a textbook, it's very much a waste of that money. It can be used for so much more. Creation, collaboration, all of those things that we want our kids to do. It's a good start, I'll give you that, but it needs to be a lot more than that. And so, 3 concepts I'm going to go over today that we're going to really put into action in a little bit in teams. The first one is mobility. This idea that we're in these classrooms, we're in these static desks, but we need to be a lot more mobile. Kids have devices. All of you in this room have at least one device. Some of you 2. Does anyone have 3? Raise your hand if you have 3 devices. Anyone have 4 devices in this room? Does anyone have 5 devices in this room? Okay, I just need to check. All right, so we're about 4 to 1, 3 to 1 in here, okay? We can see where the trend in education is going to go, right? It's going to be 3 to 1 technology soon. So mobility is a big part of what we're doing in our schools at Eanes, is how do we actually accentuate this mobile device and use it more than just sitting in those rows. And I like to tell the story about this piece of technology. This is in the 1930s. These RCA radios were just the most beautiful pieces of furniture you ever saw. They were amazing, they were magical, and the sound quality was rich, and people would come and gather around it, they would listen to radio shows, but it was usurped, it was actually disrupted by this piece of technology. The little transistor radio. In the 1950s, they started making these little things with this tinny little earbuds, and the sound quality was awful, but everybody wanted it, especially teenagers. Why?
Because they could listen to what they wanted to.
They could listen to what they wanted to listen to, right? They could have choice. And you think about what else happened in the 1950s. Rock and roll. Elvis. Revolution, right? A lot of ways. And it's because of that choice that was really able to happen. If they just had that same old piece of equipment, I don't know that would ever happen. All of a sudden we gave kids choice and we gave them mobility. And a couple of things I'd like to point out about this picture. One, this is not an old picture. This is taken from 2014. This is a college classroom. This, for one, I feel bad if you're a left-handed student in this room. And 2, I noticed when I was looking at it the other night, there's 2, not 1, but 2 overhead projectors in this room. Because in case the first one fails, you need to be able to wheel out the other one, right? And so again, this is all geared with the knowledge coming from the front of the room. There's not much mobility happening in these rooms. And a lot of you, we have one room in our high school that's very much like this. It's static desks. You can't really move them. They're actually built into the floor. Remember this movie? One of the best movies of all time, regardless of whether it's about education. I just love Dead Poets Society. And a lot of things happen in this classroom, of course, and he used the classroom a little differently. But if you think about this movie, you think about space, and you think about where learning happened. Did it all happen in that classroom? No. Where else did it happen? Outside. There was like that scene where they were reciting, remember, parts of a poem before they kick a soccer ball? It happened out in that courtyard. Remember when they were walking around? And like he would have them actually, it was a practice on uniformity, and the one student said, yeah, well, I'm not even going to march. It happened in, remember they went to the hallways, and they leaned into the trophy case, and you could hear the ghosts of the school kind of talking to them. And then, of course, one of the most important scenes, a lot of pivotal scenes happened in this cave, right? And even in this cave, the teacher wasn't even present. The learning still happened. Now, in this scene, learning happens to be a saxophone and smoking a pipe. But they actually learned other things too. They recited poetry. They were very excited to actually learn. They're very self-motivated at this point they were encouraged. And the teacher's role in this movie was to give them that encouragement. It wasn't so much that I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. It's that you have the knowledge, you just need to go out and get it. In a lot of ways, right? Carpe diem, seize the day. And so in our schools too, we started seeing this shift happen about a year after we really started rolling out iPads. We started seeing that the technology moved around with the kids, and the learning happened wherever the kids were. all of a sudden you started seeing kids doing things like this, filming movies out there, working in the library, different areas. We ended up getting soft furniture. Carolyn Foote, who's not here, she's at TLA today. She put in all this soft furniture seating in different types of ways where kids could actually come in and learn more comfortably. This last job is great. This is actually our Highline troupe. They're actually doing some practice dance drills. And the teacher was flabbergasted when this happened. She was like, well, they're watching someone actually do the routine, and like without even prompt, the kids just started pulling up their devices and filming it. And she's like, what are you doing? She's like, well, we want to rehearse later tonight. So we're just going to film her doing the routine, we're going to set it up, and then we're going to rehearse. And the teacher's like, I didn't even think about doing that. You know, the technology went with them everywhere. In our classrooms, we also tried to do some changes with those staticky desks. And I'll show you a video in one of my breakout sessions with this, but here's just a few clips of it. So we brought in a lot of these chairs. We actually said, instead of bringing in 22 chairs in a third grade classroom, let's just do this. We only brought in 12 of these. And everything else in that classroom, there's actually seating for about 30, but the kids have to move around. So some kids may be sitting on those little hockey stools in the back. They could be sitting in a desk, but every day they aren't assigned a certain seat. They actually rotate where they sit. And here's another classroom where you can actually see some of the kids. Notice also the bright colors on the walls. We started changing the colors in our classroom. We noticed a totally different approach to what a $50 gallon paint would do to you. When you walk into those classrooms, parents would come in and say, this just feels different. This feels like comfortable, encouraging, inviting. It doesn't feel like that antiseptic white that we see on all of our walls. You feel like you're walking into a sanitarium sometimes, right? What I love about these pictures is, first of all, these are kids helping each other. These are third graders doing a today's meet. They're actually moderating a session, and the girl there is actually the head moderator. You don't see the teacher in any of these pictures. There is a teacher in this classroom. In fact, in this shot, you can see where she's at. She's not at the front of the room leading the class. She's over on the side, kind of guiding them as they go along. And these kids she's actually talking to them about today's meet. They're over here. You can see on their iPads, they're actually doing what she's asking them to do, which is pretty incredible, right? Now, middle school, it's a little bit different. It's going to be a little trickier with them. But still, the mobility of the classroom and the shift has started to happen. The technology started to shift it. The furniture started to shift it. And we're starting to see more of that student-centered approach because of that mobility. So here's my question for you. Where and when do you learn best personally? So think about that. Where in your life, when in your life do you actually learn? When during the day? Where are you at when you're learning? I could be brave if I drop out of this. Yes, Mary, very true. 1-to-1 will no longer be the norm eventually. Most of us have more than that. $5 a.m. in the dark with a cup of coffee while everyone in my house is still asleep. Jessica, very true. When I first wake up in the morning, that's when I have like my moment. Like if I go out and if I can actually run some mornings, it's not really called running, it's more like walking when I run. It's kind of a not comfortable run, but when I do, that's when I get a lot of my great ideas. It's funny, I'm out there and I start thinking, I'm glad that I can actually dictate while I run sometimes when I have breath. And I'll say, this is a great idea, it just came to my head. But it's because I don't have any of that other stuff around me. I'll tell you what I started doing recently is, I don't check email until 9 a.m. And here's why. You said you too, why?
Because I work best first thing in the morning.
Yep.
I'm more creative, and then once I get an email,
You get sucked in,
creativity
right?
out.
Yeah, I try to do one project, even if it's just a small project, I try to do one project every morning, because then at the end of the day I can look back and say, I at least did something, right? I accomplished something. Because once you get into the email, yeah, you're right, it folds you in. So that's been my new routine. And obviously there's times where there's emergencies, but of course, as Anne pointed out, they know how to get a hold of me. They can just direct message me right on Twitter. But even Twitter, I don't get on any of that. I just wait until I'm done with that project. That's good. Some of you on your sofa at 2 a.m. in my pajamas. Wow, Jess, really? That's how you roll. Early morning, get a lot of early morning folks here. How many of you learn, how many of you actually go to like a place where there's other people to do things? You go to like a couple of you? Starbucks, libraries, things like that. Collaborating with like-minded friends and peers. How many of you learn best with other people? Be curious to see how many in the room actually do that. So different. Okay? How many of you learn best just by yourself? You don't need anyone else around. Okay, we got a lot of loners in here. That's okay. We're going to break that today. Depends on where I'm sitting. Comfortable seating seems to be a trend too. Here, I hear patio furniture, I hear sofas. Again, think back to our classrooms. Who has the most comfortable chair in your entire school district? The teacher, I think even
Principal.
the principal, I think even superintendent. In ours, it's the board members. You know, we have 7 board member chairs that they sit in twice a month. And they're the most plush, beautiful chairs. But our kids are put in these sort of like torture devices in some ways, right? I mean, you're sitting in this thing, and I had an experience. It was an interesting experience. And Tracy did this too in Huntsville, where I was a student for a day, and I walked through the high school as a student. I dressed up like a student. I did not pass for a student for some reason. I don't know why. I even messed up my hair and wore a hoodie and everything. But as I went to the high school that day, I realized that man, they're sitting in these very uncomfortable chairs. By about the 4th period, my back started to hurt. I was like, how are they? And I tried to turn around and talk to a kid, and it was one of those all-in-one desks, and it was actually physically hard for me to move it around. And so I think about that. Think about it when you go back to your school district. Where are the most comfortable chairs, and why are they there? Something to consider. Again, weekends at home with my lazy boy. There we go, Jeff. Yeah, it's very true. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about mobility. Let's talk about the second piece that's important that we're going to use today, and it's collaboration. We hear this a lot. And really, when you think about the definition of to collaborate, it means, it's an intensive verb, it means to work with another person in group in order to achieve or do something. You're actually heading toward a task, you're accomplishing a goal. Today we're going to be doing that in a challenge I'm going to lay out for you right at the end of this. But it's interesting, there's another definition for collaborating that I had to put up here, which is to give help to an enemy who's invaded your country during a war. Kind of random. There may be some of this happening today too, we don't know. When I think of the best examples of collaboration, I think of this example of something that a group of 1,500 people around the world did in the game Minecraft. And what they did is they actually recreated the entire Game of Thrones universe in Minecraft to scale. So that's the wall. If anybody's seen the movie for the show, that's the big 700-foot wall. This is actually a picture of the Red Keep where the knights, it's called King's Landing. And they spent hours, like 22 different types of languages. They worked together, they collaborated together to build, and each one would actually take different parts of the world to recreate it. Global collaboration happening, all of them from the basement of their parents' house. I was impressed. No, I'm just joking. But still, think about the amount of time it took to actually do that. And so I've heard this before. Dean Sharesky stood up here and told you this. The smartest person in the room is in the room. George Couros has stand up here and said this to you. I think it's evolved past this now. I think now we could probably say that the smartest person in the world is the world. We can expand it out past the room, right? So that quote is by me. And I have some great examples of this. Because of Twitter, and Ann kind of alluded to it earlier, I've now seen things that I never thought I would see before. From my own followers, bringing them to my actual hashtag, or to my actual mention. So here we go. Here's Michelle Cordy, as she's walking along the hiking trail. And you'll see this phenomenon happen, especially with my last name for some reason, that people like to just take pictures of this and put it up. Hey, Carl, check this out. Here's actually Carolyn Foote. Need to get you this t-shirt in Monterey. Jessica, there you go. I can't help but think of a circle when I pass this barn. I had to stop and take pictures. These are all okay. I thought about it. Is there one in here that's bad? I don't think so. This is Beth Holland. She said, oh, you have to get one of this. It's a bat hooker on the back of this thing. Tim Holtz, who's not here, just sent me this a few days ago. All my friends are hookers. I said, oh, I need to get that t-shirt. This one was like just a couple weeks ago. This is, if you look at the police car, it's the hooker police. He's like, you better be careful out there. They're looking for you. My guess is, I don't know where this came from, but my guess is there's one town in Oklahoma called Hooker, Oklahoma, and my guess is this is where this one police car lives. I'm hoping. That'd be pretty interesting if it wasn't. So I think it's also interesting to think about who out there is actually putting out this content. And so let's play a game with your TEC SIG officers called Who Tweeted That? Are you ready? Here we go, TEC SIG officers. Oh, yeah. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put a tweet out there. I'm going to cover up who said it. And I want you, the audience, to take a guess as to who you think it is. All right, here we go. First, because wait, I'll give you some choices here. Because frying it once wasn't enough, bacon is the gateway meat. Here are your choices. Here come our lovely officers down there at the bottom. All right. And the bolts. What do we think? Yes, and the bolts. Yes, and a bonus one, you actually mentioned fried technology in that tweet. That was good. Now, I'm sure none of you will guess who this next one is. Searching for a George Couros hug at TCA 15. Miguel. You got it right! No, of course, it's Christy. She's turning 3 shades of red right now. We're turning 50 shades of red. Okay, next. My notes, how incoming CIOs can hit the ground running.
That's Miguel.
So is this one, and this one, and that one, and that one, and that one. All within about an hour, by the way. It didn't take me long to find all those.
In less than 5 sentences.
With this shirt, what turns us off and who needs pants? It's none of them. It's this gentleman right here. So it's interesting, all the things you can discover on this wonderful platform, right? And just in looking, literally searching for, in Miguel's case, a few minutes, and all the things that are actually out there, and how it's brought us all together in terms of collaboration. Now, Tracy Clark, I don't know if she's here or not, but she shared this with me about a year and a half ago, and I've used it all the time. I can tell her, I was like, I'm going to use her graphic, because what this graphic represents is when all Fortune 500 Fortune 500 CIOs and CEOs were actually interviewed, they were asked, what are some traits that you want in your future employees and your current employees today? These are the words that came up the most often. So she calls it her soft skills bingo card. And it's amazing to think about some of these words in that you don't see, high scores on the STAR test up here. You don't actually see certain technology devices up here. But you do see these skills. In fact, these 4 you've probably heard of before, right? The 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And I look at these and I think, how are we actually using this in our schools today? When I spoke to our school board about 6 months ago about how things were going, I said, these are the areas that we really need to focus on. I mean, academia is important, don't get me wrong. We need to do good at tests and all of that. But I mean, are our kids leaving with these kind of skills? If you have a middle school student, these two over here, time management and organization, are really tricky, right? It's a real hard skill for them to learn at the age of about 13 or 14 years old. How are we teaching them those skills? Perseverance, handling criticism. Our kids aren't allowed to fail hardly anymore, right? They don't get a chance to fail. So how do they handle that criticism and how they handle that failure? It's a big thing. I had a certain parent, I get these a lot, of course, working in a district that's one-to-one, you get a lot of parent concerns. Sometimes they start out the same way. It's like, Carl, I got to talk to you about these iPads, and those iPads that live on the other side of the tracks that come over here and invaded our school. And they'll say stuff to me like, I'm just worried about something. And so this one parent came up to me, started that same way. I got to talk to you about these iPads. And I said, okay, well, what's going on? And I was impressed because what she said is, she was, I'm so thankful that you guys decided to do this. I know it was a risk, but I'm thankful you guys decided to do this, and here's why. Her daughter was trying to raise some money for her nephew, Dylan, who has a disease called Krabbe's disease. It's a neurodegenerative disorder, 2 years old. He's doing okay, but it's fatal. So they're trying to get research gathered for him. So the daughter did what most daughters do, what most kids do at that age, and she says, I'm going to start a lemonade stand, right? So she went out, she got her friends together, said, let's do a lemonade stand, and every Saturday they went out to this stop on this corner in the neighborhood of Eanes and said, and they got maybe $20, $30, they were getting money, it was great, but they just weren't really doing it. They were like, Mom, I want to do something more than this. I want to make a website for Dylan. And so the mom said, great, your uncle is a designer, a web designer. She's like, no. She was, we make our own websites in 4th grade on Weebly. I want to make our own website. And so she did. She made her own website, and it's called Lemonade for Dylan. And she did a couple simple things. She put a little donate button there, and then she put a donate button also for Hunter's Hope, which is a larger organization that kind of covers and tries to help with this disease. And what's amazing about this project is she actually did lots of other things. She actually organized, on this website, she would organize, she was like a project manager. She would say, okay, we're going to divide and conquer. We're going to check out traffic patterns on certain streets and figure out where the most trafficked intersections are in our district. And then she coordinated with other kids to set up lemonade stands across the city to gather money for this cause. A 10-year-old doing these things. Now, a lot of this, the technology definitely enhances it, but it's more about the kid in that sense, right? But if you think about some of these skills, think about some of the things she did. She was very self-directed. She was a leader. She encouraged teamwork. She had to be organized. She had to prioritize where they needed to go. She needed to communicate effectively to get people out to those spots. Again, this is part of why this is important for us, actually encouraging these soft skills. And so we kind of talked a little bit about mobility and collaboration. This last one is an important one, and this is really where we're here for, right? Content. It's a big part of everything we do in education. Why do we spend 92% of our IMA dollars in the state of Texas on? We spend it on content. We spend it on textbooks. Only 7 to 8% is spent on actual technology. Jennifer just said that last month in her webinar, and I was impressed. I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like a lot. It seems like we're still spending it all on the content. And it's that consumption versus creation. What are we consuming versus what we can create? And you know, a lot of our kids, they have access to this thing, right? They have access to Google. They can get access to all this content. At TEC SIG, we're actually lucky. We have access to something that's better than Google. I call it this. Google. The source of all knowledge is just Googling it, right? You know? I'm going to Google myself today. No, sorry. Okay. But seriously, they have access to all this content, and we still have this kind of old system of how content is being delivered to us. And so you think about the newspaper industry, right? A story happens at 5 o'clock, and someone reports on it. They write about it. It gets edited at about 8, 10 o'clock at night. It gets published at about midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, printed, delivered on your doorstep the next day, 12 to 14 hours after it's actually happened, right? News is being delivered, content's being delivered at a later time. But then you think about now with mobility, collaboration, and these devices, you can actually create your own news. So my best example I like to share is it happened about 2 years ago, the Boston Marathon bombing, remember that? There was, I was following along on the hashtag on Twitter while I was actually watching the live news. And I was getting news faster on my phone than they were actually delivering it to me on television. My wife was actually like, how are you knowing all? I was like, hey, they just found a guy in a boat. And then the reporter gets up 5 minutes later and says, hey, we just found a guy in a boat. And it was amazing. It was coming. She's like, how do you figure this out? Now, if this is the first time you've ever heard this, I apologize. But not everything on the internet is real. Okay? And so sometimes, with Twitter especially, I mean, I think there's 9 people running around the city of Boston with bombs. You know, a lot of misinformation too. But you think about our kids, there's always this complaint that kids get everything instantly. Well, they have to also discern what's true and what's not. And we need to make sure we're encouraging them to do that. Of course, the ultimate example of kind of mixed media was what happened right after last year when we got the state to allow us to actually use iPads. We're going to do on Tuesday with our state test. We're going to use iPads as a calculator. They actually published it in the local Austin American Statesman. And my mom, who follows one person on Twitter, it's Shirley, yes, and her middle initial is A, so put that together. Yes, she married into that one, folks, come on. She had a phone that wasn't, it wasn't like a smartphone, but it wasn't a dumb phone. It was kind of like a phone with learning difficulties, you know? She could take pictures, but she couldn't text them, so she would take a picture and tweet it at me, not realizing that everybody in the world would see it. Like, hey, look, we're having pot roast for dinner. I'm like, thank you, Mom, that's great, everyone can see that. But this is an interesting one. So this came out in the paper, and she took a picture of it and sent it to me. And it was actually right when the state finally said, okay, we'll allow you to do this, right? So on Tuesday, like I said, we're going to do this. We're going to lock them down. We're going to see how this goes. 650 some odd kids, I think it is, all taking the STAR Math 8 test, all with their iPads as a calculator. We'll see how that goes. And I think about other content, and not just the newspaper industry, but think about this industry in particular. Some of these books, by the way, I love this picture because, you know, there's regular science, and then there's Texas science. We got our own science here, folks. Come on now. Just interesting that we... But you think about this content and what it's been like. It's just like the newspaper industry, right? Somebody has an idea of what you need to learn, it gets edited, it gets published, and then you get to have it sit on your bookshelf for 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, forever, someone said over there. You're in Louisiana, it's like 10 years, I heard. Yeah, so again, the content never changes at that point. But just like with the news, we're starting to see a shift. We're starting to create our own content. Scott Floyd did this in your district. You tried to do it before you got in trouble with the state, right? Using IMA money to help you build books, like using ck12.org to actually have your teachers create their own content. We've taken it a step further. We've actually used, we're using iBooks Author right now with our Texas history teachers for 4th and 7th grade because we have that adoption coming up. So instead of buying a textbook, we're going to pay the teachers a stipend of money, not out of IMA we found out because we got in trouble for that, yes?
It's legal now. I was being
out of IMA, we're going to pay our teachers. Not with my credit card. But we're going to pay the teachers to actually get together and create these books. They've already started planning it. They've organized the lessons, the units. They're going to create the content. Eanes is going to own it. And we're going to pay the teachers an amount of money that will actually help them out too. So it's kind of a win-win in that sense. And we're also going to vet it with a third-party company called Learning List that actually pulls the textbook in and says, this is how many of the TEC standards you hit, 90%, 100%, whatever. In a lot of ways, we're going to save ourselves a ton of money because we're not going to spend X number of $1 million to giving it to some company that rhymes with Pearson, right? Sorry, I had to say that for Scott. So again, now we're starting to create our own content. Of course, you take it to the next level, The next level would be not teachers creating the content, but probably who? Students. And I've seen some teachers starting to do this, where they actually have their kids helping them create their own kind of textbooks throughout the school year. Now the kids learn more by doing it. And of course, when it comes to creating content, we have this word of the year for 2013, our favorites, the selfie. And since George Couros isn't here, I had to bring up a picture of somebody that he loves and he talks about every time. It's the person who actually invented the selfie. If Al Gore invented the internet, then this guy invented the selfie, right? Justin Bieber. As a matter of fact, if you Google Justin Bieber and selfie, you'll get at least over 1,000 pictures that come up of just himself taking pictures of himself. It's pretty impressive. But he actually didn't invent the selfie. If you look here, 1900, this photo actually took place. The woman there, if you look underneath her arm, what is she doing? She's got a camera underneath her arm there, taking a picture of herself in the mirror. And of course, if you think about artists, Nancy Escher was one of the first ones to ever invent the selfie, right? This was one of the most artistic ones you've ever seen. And then, of course, celebrities in the 1960s. And celebrities started taking selfies with politicians. And then politicians started taking selfies that got them in trouble. You know, I love the look on Michelle's face. Seriously, you're going to do this right now? And then we have a Japanese astronaut in outer space. Took a selfie in 2013. You know, this one which broke the internet, what was it, the Academy Awards in 2014. And of course, whenever you have a great selfie, you have to remix it. So here's the Lego version of that very same selfie. And the Simpsons version of that very same selfie. All sorts of versions. And in fact, I saw just recently on Instagram this selfie, which is pretty impressive too. This is of our Amy Mary. The great thing was, I sent her an email last week. I was like, "Hey, can you send me that weird picture of you?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." Why not? You're not going to share this with anybody? No. Just family. I'm just going to leave it up there for a minute because I want you Yes. You guys knew when you paid me to come up here and speak. I was very impressed that you were brave enough to let me come up here and do this. So I think also about that idea of content and how we can create it. In our schools, I've shared this story before too, but this is actually, we had this situation in our American Sign Language class where there was no real apps out there that would help our kids with American Sign Language. There's a couple, but they're very expensive. And one of our students, Michael Bartmus, actually was taking an iOS coding class at the same time. And so what he decided to do, very clever kid, is what did he do? He went and he actually created his own app for American Sign Language. And this is the finger spelling app. And it was free for a little while, and then he started charging 99 cents. Got about 3,000 or 4,000 kids to download it. So he made a little extra money, and he also taught kids about American Sign Language. And there's a side story to this that's really clever. I love to tell the story. Michael, when he was doing the actual photographing of hands, he had like a model tryout. Very clever kid. This is how he picked up girls, right? So he would sit back there and like, no, next, please, next. Let me see. And he would take over 5,000 pictures in front of a green screen of different hand placements, of different hand models, to put into this app. Very simple app. You type in the words and it spells them out for you with a hand motion. Again, clever, creative content that our kids are now creating. So here's my question for you. What was the last thing you ever created? We know what Eanes was, but what was the last thing? What was the last thing that you created? And it could have been this morning. It could have been on the drive here, which would have been interesting.
That's the last thing I read.
I'm trying to think, excluding problems, right?
Yes, Mike, I'm going to guess it's something on the grill, right? Some sort of mammal. The last thing you created. This will be our. Oh, there we go. A terrarium. Tracy, really? When was that? I learned how to fix a washing machine using YouTube. I mean, I didn't actually put YouTube on the washing machine and fix it, which would be great. No, the same thing. I watched. I'm going to use YouTube to create something or do something recently. Wow. What's an example of something you made using YouTube? Someone call it out.
Water feature.
A water feature?
We're building a boat dock this summer, based on YouTube videos.
Building a boat dock? Now, you should make a YouTube video about that. That would be entertaining too.
Yeah, survival bracelets. My son does scouts and he learned.
All the survival bracelets on Scouts, yeah.
A little
styrofoam cooler air conditioner for my tent when I go camping.
Oh, very cool.
That's like,
I might need to Google that.
It's totally redneck,
Styrofoam
like
coolers.
Called redneck
You
water
see some
cooler.
others in here.
It's an air conditioner.
John, the last thing I created was my waffle this morning. Very good. You know, someone else put this one, like, this tweet. That was all it said. I was like, what? Oh, that's clever. The last thing you created was a tweet. So we create all sorts of things on a regular basis, and I think a lot of people in this room are very creative. And so we're going to put that to a test here in a minute. We kind of challenge ourselves to play this game of school on a daily basis. We talked about it a lot this morning. You're sitting in the desks, you're going through school, you're making sure you're getting your right grades, but we want to learn about all those soft skills and how we're using them. And so, by the way, second Game of Thrones reference, I know. I'm starting to switch from zombies to that for those guys that don't know me. This, to me, was the ultimate creation tool when I was a kid. This beautiful, heavy, giant piece of technology sat on my shoulder, and I recorded hours and hours and hours of video, and thank goodness YouTube didn't exist back then. In fact, I did find a little clip of a video that I made. This was actually, oh wait, I'll set it up for you. There was a 5th grade assignment we had to do. We had to do this, it was a recipe assignment. We had to actually talk about writing things out in steps. So step 1, take out your bread. Step 2, put peanut butter on it. Step 3, make the sandwich, that kind of stuff. So our homework that night was to go home and do that. And I said, you know what, I've got this camera. I'm going to make it even better than that. I'm going to actually create a video, a cooking show of me making something, these cookies that I liked to make when I was a kid. And so here's what it looked like. And again, fashion sense, very good. And I had this microwave from like 1968. When you turn it on, watch the lights, they'll actually dim. And this cookie had like 17 eggs in it, butter, chocolate, and I would kind of take this huge thing and mix it up. And then eventually I put it in the oven, and of course, I forgot to wear my other oven mitts. Right there, I burned my hand. In fact, I still have the scar, which is crazy. From that long ago, 30 years ago, still have the scar, man. Yeah, and I was trying to do my accent because this is in Michigan when I was going to school at the time up in Michigan, and so I really laid on the Texas accent. I was like, you gotta let it cool for about 15 minutes before you eat it. You know, the whole time I was laying on the accent. So I take this video, I submit it, the teacher goes and she goes, all right. She goes down to the library and she pulls out that one cart with the television on it and the VHS tape, puts it in, I play the video, the kids are like, great, they cheer, everything's great, and then I get my grade. And it's an F. And I said, why, you know, as an 11-year-old, I'm not going to question the teacher. I was depressed. I went home and tried to figure out why. And she said, her exact words were, well, you didn't follow directions. You were supposed to write out step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and hand that in. And actually what I did is I handed out a recipe card, and it had ingredients on it that I didn't write out. If I would have thought about it, I should have written on the back, like step 1, do this, and it would have actually completed it. And I started, that moment stuck with me from that point in education when I was 11 years old till now, is what's more important, following directions or actually showing what you're learning? And so I carried that with me all the way through my career and thought, this is what's the most important thing to be happening in our classrooms. It's not about learning that you're actually writing the right things on the test or answering the right questions, but are you actually learning it? I had a friend share a story with me yesterday about her 6th grade daughter who got a math quiz back on a Friday and had missed a lot of parts of it. And so the teacher said, okay, you missed these 8 questions, go home over the weekend and correct them and then bring it in on Monday. And she said, well, I actually want to learn what I did wrong. I want to learn the math. I don't want to just fix the problems. How am I going to do that over the weekend by myself? But we do that a lot, right? Go home and fix this and then come back and then you've done it, but did you actually learn anything? What's most important there? And this is kind of my final example, and this is this is another 9th grade. This is a 9th grader, I think, who did this. This was about a year and a half ago in Latin class. Actually was told, very similar to me, was told you have to go home, you're going to create a project about the Roman bathhouse, you're going to talk about it in Latin, because this is Latin class, and when you come in, you're going to do a presentation on PowerPoint for 2 minutes about the Roman bathhouse. And he said, can I do something a little different? I love Minecraft, can I go ahead and recreate this bathhouse in Minecraft, and then voice over it? And it's kind of quiet, you can't really hear it, but he's actually, while he's walking through this maze, he's actually speaking in Latin. And he rehearsed it several times. He did a screen capture of this and rehearsed it several times and brought it in. He's memorized it. This is 2 years later. I could ask him, he could still tell me all the parts of this Roman bathhouse. He knew all this stuff. And when the teacher showed me this, I was floored. First thing I said was, we're blocking Minecraft in the district. How is he doing that? No, we're not anymore. But it was still impressive to me. And of course, she was most impressed with the fact that he actually showed his learning. He didn't exactly follow directions, but he did demonstrate that he knew the material. And that was most important to her. So we take these three things, content, the collaboration, mobility, we mix them all together, we're going to get a game out of this. We're going to create something called an interactive learning challenge. And the way this is going to work is we're going to do this as teams. And we did this at iPad Palooza last year and tested it out. It was very interesting. I'm going to try something different today with it because it actually involves a new app that just came out a couple of months ago that works on Android or iOS, either one. And so we're going to do our TEC SIG edition of this. And so what I need you to do is, before you stand up, we need to make teams. And it would be really easy for me to say you can just pick your friends. I don't like to do that. So what we're going to do is this. This is a big room, so this is going to be kind of tricky. What I want you to do is we're going to line up in order of the biggest district in terms of enrollment to the smallest district in terms of enrollment. Okay? So here's how it'll work. Because we don't have a lot of room in here, we'll start back there where Tim and Tracy are. Tim and Tracy, you guys wave. Okay, you guys are going to represent the largest district. Let's say, well, not right now, but in a little bit. So if you're in a large district, you're going to start back there, and then we'll go smaller, 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 and then the smallest district will probably be somewhere right up here by the stage. We'll have to cut through the crowd there. And we're going to do something with this in just a second, but I want us to get in line. If you're not in a school district, if you work for a company, you can just kind of filter in somewhere in the middle. Okay? You don't need your technology right now. You just need to stand up. All right, so largest over there, smallest over here. Figure it out. Let's see where we're at. Are you the winner? The smallest district? 12 students. Anyone have less than 12? We're about to.
I'm going to say we're about in the middle.
I've got to record this. I'm going to follow you.
We're following you. You're our leader.
You're 24? 24 kids? Oh, 2,400. Yeah, let's help you out. 2,400 right here. All right, flat down the line. We're always having this, it gets real crowded. Spread out more that way. Big districts, go more that way. Big districts, go out that way. Yeah. We're 8,000 kids. I know we're 8,000. Oh, here you go. Hold up your hand how many thousand kids you have. 400. We got our 4,000s here, 10,000s here. Are you all going to need to move down a little bit? Keep moving down. 22,000, keep moving down. Slide down, slide down. Come on down this way. 28, 29, 43, 48, 105, 114, okay. 700,000. 550,000. Wow. 2,000 right there? Okay. Spread out, spread out. Okay, we're going to have to flatten out a little bit. Are we all crowded here in the 6-5 area? All right. Try to flatten out as much as you can, because here's what we're going to do. Keep going, Janet, just keep going around that way. We'll keep bringing the low end down there. Not you, I'm not saying you're the low end. All right.
Okay, I got it.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take, who's our largest enrollment? Okay, largest enrollment, right? 700,000 on 1.7 million, right? All right, good. You're going to follow me. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold the line in half. So he's going to follow me, you're going to follow him, you're going to follow, we're going to walk all the way back around until we fold the line in half. So you're going to line up with that young lady down there. All right, here we go. Come on down, let's follow, let's fold over, fold over, fold over. Hello? Oh, watch out, make sure you don't trip what's in there. Yeah, high fives in the line. All right, here's where we're going to have a problem. We're going to have to try to flatten out if we can. Squeeze on there, or sort of flatten out. Maybe all right. There we go. Go on down, go on down.
Okay, I think you're good.
This is an impressive version here. Okay, all the way down. Still going, still holding it down. We're almost there. Okay. And you're back to where you were. Okay, so everybody line up with somebody across from them. Introduce yourself, say hello. Give a handshake, a fist bump, an awkward sideways hug. Okay. Say hello. Partner. Okay. All right. So now the hardest thing to do is get everyone to listen. All right. Here's what we're going to do next. I'm not done yet. One more thing. What we need to do next is, if I don't step on somebody's iPad here. Next, we're going to actually break up into groups of 4. So here's how that's going to happen. We're going to... And I'm glad you got that on tape. Sorry for the bucket. I'm glad this lobby was in. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Yes, I know. My wife probably at home going, what are you doing up there? Okay. So we're going to go into teams of 4. So what's going to happen is we're just going to quad up. So when you have the 4 of you together, it'll be team 1. So you'll be team 1. This is important to remember. You'll be team 2. You 4 right here. You 4 right here are team 3. Team 4. Rich, your team is team 5. You guys are team 6. You guys right here, you 4 are team 7. Team 8. Team 9. Team 10. Team 11. You guys are team 13. 4 your group is team 14. 2 your group is team 15. You 4 right here are team 16. 10 your group right here is team 15. Team 18. Team 19. Team 20, okay? Okay. All right, go back to your table with your team for just 1 minute of instructions. So go back to a table somewhere. I'm going to give you instructions. Go ahead and head on back to your table, to a table. You got a table? Do not stand on the tables, as we learned from that. Okay.
I've got to get my glasses.
On the screen, you'll see something that's up here you need to have in your team. So, at least one member of your team will need to have a smartphone. Does anybody in here have a smartphone? Oh. You'll need to have one member of your team with a smartphone, and they'll need an app called Event Z. And it looks just like this. It's an iPhone or an Android app. It is not an iPad app, but you can put it on your iPad as an iPhone app. So if one member of your team needs that app, ideally somebody in here has a camera on their device, which I think we do. Somebody will probably need some sort of artistic/drawing app either on their computer or on their phone or on their tablet. You'll want somebody on your team to have a collage type app or a way to make a collage, whether it's online. Again, this is device agnostic. It's not just iPads versus Chromebooks. That's later this afternoon. So this is, again, just tools. Yep. And then the last thing, of course, we'll need to have imagination, creativity, and collaboration. So here's what's going to happen. One of you is going to download, actually multiple of you can download the app. It doesn't have to be just one person, but one person on your team definitely needs to have the Event Z app. And in a second, you'll get the Event Z app, you'll log in, you have to create a login, and I'm going to put a QR code up here. When the QR code flies up on the screen, it's going to launch you into the challenge. And the first thing it's going to say is, which team do you belong to? So hopefully you remember your team number. Oh, we already forgot? 12? Okay. Does anyone not know their team number? 13? Okay. Okay, good. This is going to happen throughout TEC SIG. So the challenge is, it's kind of a high-end, it's kind of a hybrid photo scavenger hunt / creation. The Events app is going to throw challenges at you, and throughout the rest of the day, you're going to have to try to accomplish some of these challenges. There's going to be a live leaderboard that's going to be publishing how you're doing on the challenges. And at the end of the day, we have some amazing door prizes up here. We actually have gift cards in envelopes, one for each of your teams. So first place, it's a team of 4. You have 4 gift cards coming to your team. Okay, so you're going to want to try to accomplish lots of the things on this challenge. I'm giving you guys, I'm stalling for a second because I want to make sure everyone has at least the app. I'm going to put the QR code up on the screen. And at that point, it's from now until right before the SmackDown. We'll stop it right around 3 o'clock. We have that network time that's built in there, right, man? So from about 2:50 to 3:15, we'll tally up the final parts. So does everyone have the app? Are you able to get it? Okay. You're going to need to log in. One of you is going to have a login so it'll account. It could be Google, Facebook, however you want to log in. I'm going to put the QR code up here. And now you should be able to join the contest. And remember, when you join, to select your team. Let's hope that worked. I may have to start it.
It's not.
Not active? Okay, give me a second. I'll make it active. That was just a joke. Here we go. I know I didn't. Oh, here, let me move this over the other way. Not active. You're right. It isn't. Let's make it active. Yes, let's make it active. Active. Okay. Try that again. Did it work? Virgil's already blocking people. You might have to scroll down to find your team. There's a lot of teams in here. And you can kind of scan through the clues. There's lots of clues in there. And basically, guys, here's the thing. You can't use your camera roll for this. It's all photo-driven. So if somebody creates something on their device, someone else on the team has to take a picture of what that is. And they do that on purpose. You're not just able to pull things off of Google and images and things like that. So you have to actually take a picture today with your device to make it part of that scavenger hunt. So once you're in the scavenger hunt, you join your team, you'll see the clues. Some point today at lunch, I'm going to throw a wild card clue at you. You'll just see it pop up on your phone, so you may want to make sure you have notifications turned on. And that's it. The challenge has started.